Hello students, welcome to the program. The topic chosen for today's program is Concept of Mental Health and Mental Hygiene. Health is often used to refer to a state of physical, mental and social and spiritual well-being of an individual. This mental health is one of the components of the broad concept of health. It is considered with an optimum level of emotional and behavioral adjustment of the individual. Mental health describes a level of psychological well-being or an absence of a mental disorder. From the perspective of positive psychology or holism, mental health may include an individual's ability to enjoy life and create a balance between life activities and efforts to achieve psychological resilience. The World Health Organization defines mental health as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. World Health Organization stresses that mental health is not just the absence of mental disorders. Mental health stands for the health of the mind, as Carter V. Good in the Dictionary of Education has termed it as the wholesomeness of the mind. It was previously stated that there was no official definition of mental health. Most recently, the field of global mental health has emerged, which has been defined as the area of study, research and practice that places a priority on improving mental health and achieving equity in mental health for all people worldwide. The history of mental health and hygiene is old as our civilization. In India, Ayurveda successfully developed a full-fledged system for treating the mentally ill people long back. But in the West, the mental hygiene movement started in the first decade of the 20th century. The history of mental health is the remarkable story of one person, Clifford Beers, also called the father of mental hygiene, a graduate of Yale College, who suffered his first episode of bipolar disorder following the illness and death of his brother. During his illness, Beers attempted to take his own life by jumping out a third-story window. Seriously injured but still alive, Beers ended up in public and private hospitals for the next 3 years. While in these institutions, Beers learned firsthand of the deficiencies in care as well as the cruel and inhumane treatment that people with mental illness received. Upon his release, Beers was resolved to expose the maltreatment of people with mental illnesses and to reform care. In 1908, he published his autobiography, A Mind That Found Itself. In the book, Beers declares, "As I penetrated and conquered the mysteries of the dark side of my life, it no longer held any terror for me. I have decided to stand on my past and look the future in the face." On February 19, 1909, Beers, along with philosopher William James and psychiatrist Adolph Meyer, created the National Committee for Mental Hygiene. Later, the National Mental Health Association and what we today known as the Mental Health America. Beers formed an international committee for mental hygiene in 1919. By 1930s, the times of the first International Congress of Mental Hygiene in Washington, D.C., there were mental hygiene societies in 25 countries. In London at the Third International Congress in 1948, the World Federation for Mental Health was formed. Despite the progress towards more humane treatment of mental patients in the 19th century, the mentally ill in United States continued to be persecuted well into the 20th century. An example of this is this inhumane treatment was the experience of Perry Beard, a graduate from University of Texas, who at the age of 34 in 1945 was hospitalized because of a manic depressive condition. Between 1944 and 1948, he wrote a manuscript titled Echoes from a Dungeon Cell, in which Perry declares, "I pray to God that in the future I shall be able to remember that once one has crossed the lines from normal walks of life into a psychopathic hospital, one is separated from friends and relatives by walls thicker than stone walls of prejudice and superstitions." Dear students, now the mental health in Indian perspective. Treatment of mental disorders in India mainly included psychotherapy, physiotherapy, shock, drug treatment, hypnotism, and religious discourses by sages. As per Ayurveda, psychotherapy used to be in the form of talismans, charms, prayers, and sleeping in temples with rituals. The indigenous manner of giving shock to the patients was terrorizing them by snakes, lions, elephants, or men dressed as pandits. During the rule of King Ashoka, many hospitals were established for mentally ill. A temple of Lord Venkateshwara at Tamil Nadu contains inscriptions on the walls which mentioned a hospital named as Sri Veera Cholaeswara Hospital and contained 15 beds. Till early 60s, mental hospitals were the only places available for the treatment of mentally ill. However, as compared to the number of mentally ill patients, the service available were very less. On the recommendations of Boer Committee, 1946, All India Institute of Mental Health was set up in 1954, which became the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences in 1974 at Bangalore. An expert committee of World Health Organization in 1974 urged its members to consider mental disorders as a high priority problem. Hence, first community mental health unit was started with the Department of Psychiatry at National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences in 1975. National Mental Health Program was implemented to provide services to rural as well as urban population. However, even today, 80% of the rural population does not get these services. Now, the characteristics of mentally healthy persons. First, characteristics of mental health. Some of the characteristics of mental health are: number one, there is nothing called perfect mental health, rather it's optimum mental health. We can make a comparison among the people as per their mental health or their adjustment with self and environment. Number 2, mental health is a dynamic concept which denotes a state of balance or equilibrium of our mind. Number 3, mental health can't be achieved without physical health. As rightly said, sound mind lies in a sound body. Number 4, mental health and efficiency is not the same thing. One may be quite efficient and successful at his work or profession, but he could be most unhappy or full of anxiety. Number 5, mental health and social ability are not the same thing. A mentally healthy person is sociable. It is not necessary for a sociable person to be healthy-minded. Number 6, mental health differs from ethical standards. Morality does not guarantee mental health. Now the characteristics of mentally healthy person. A mentally healthy person is one who has adequate physical and intellectual development, has adequate emotional and social development, is always self-confident, knows his abilities, motives and desires, etc., and works accordingly, participates in creative and constructive activities, always lives in a world of reality rather than that of imagination and fantasy, remains satisfied, is happy and remains cheerful. Now students, the concept and definition of mental hygiene. Mental hygiene is a science which deals with the process of attaining and preserving mental health in the society. In other words, mental hygiene is the means and mental health is the end. Dorothy Dix was an important figure in the development of mental hygiene movement. Dix was a school teacher who endeavored throughout her life to help those suffering from mental illness and to bring to light the deplorable conditions into which they were put. This was known as the mental hygiene movement. Before this movement, it was not uncommon that people affected by mental illness in the 19th century would be considerably neglected, often left alone in deplorable conditions, barely even having sufficient clothing. The National Committee for Mental Hygiene was founded in New York in 1909 by a number of leading psychiatrists and Clifford Beers, who described his experiences in his autobiography, A Mind That Found Itself. The basic ideas of mental hygiene were derived from the dynamic psychiatry of Adolf Meyer. According to Meyer, mental illness and mental disorder were the outcome of dynamic interaction of individuals with their environments. In the mid-19th century, William Sweetzer was the first to clearly define the term mental hygiene. Isaac Ray, one of the 13th founders of American Psychiatric Association, further defined mental hygiene as an art to preserve the mind against incidents and influences which would inhibit or destroy its energy, quality or development. Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic ideas became increasingly influential in the United States in 1920s. Psychoanalysis emphasized the importance of early childhood experiences and their impact on mental health later in life. Some definitions of mental hygiene. Dear students, different people have different views about the term mental hygiene. Some of these views are: Adolf Meyer and other psychologists used the term mental hygiene for the first time in history and said, mental hygiene deals with the mental health of the individuals In the same way, the physical hygiene is concerned with their physical health. As per Crow and Crow, mental hygiene is a science that deals with the human welfare and pervades all fields of human relationships. American Psychiatric Association views mental hygiene as mental hygiene consists of measures to reduce the incidence of mental illness through prevention and early treatment and promote mental health. Now, objectives and principles of mental hygiene. First, the objectives of mental hygiene. Mental hygiene is a science which deals with the process of attaining mental health and preserving mental health in the society. The main objective of mental hygiene is to build up one's ego rather than tearing down another's ego. Some main objectives of mental hygiene are: number 1, to help to realize one's potentiality. Number 2, to develop self-respect and respect for others. Number 3, to understand one's limitations and tolerate the limitations of others. Number 4, to cause a harmonious development. Number 5, to enable one to make effective adjustment in all spheres of life and all situations such as in school, home, society, and also with self. Now, principles of mental hygiene. To formulate general principles of mental hygiene is a really difficult task, as there is a wide range of differences among the individuals. There is no single or absolute standard to judge human behavior or action. However, in spite of these difficulties, we can formulate some general principles. These are: number 1, adjustment in home. Every child should develop such type of behavior at home so that he can adjust himself in any type of situation. Parents should take utmost care, because the behavior patterns that develop in early childhood leave permanent impressions on the child. Number 2, adjustment in school. The school, through its various activities, can go a long way in creating an environment for the children to preserve and develop their mental health. Number 3, adjustment to society. Man is a social animal and he has to adjust himself with the society. Without proper social interaction, harmonious development of personality cannot occur. Hence, parents, teachers, and society must provide socially acceptable channels for the release of pent-up emotional feelings so that children and adolescents develop healthy personalities. Number 4, adjustment to work. According to Freud, one is mentally healthy if one can work successfully. School, through its programs, should develop the proper mental state towards work in child. Now, the functions and importance of mental hygiene. First, the functions of mental hygiene. According to Crow and Crow, mental hygiene has 3 main aims. They are the prevention of mental disorder, the preservation of the mental health, the discovery and utilization of the therapeutic measures to cure mental illness. This reveals that mental hygiene has 4 important functions, which are: number 1, preventive functions. The most important function of mental hygiene is to prevent mental health problems by developing some programs. Number 2, curative function. Another function of mental hygiene is to develop programs like counseling, psychotherapy to treat an individual or a group or to treat a mental patient. Number 3, preservative function. Not all the people are mentally ill, rather some of them possess sound mental health. So the third function is to preserve mental health. Number 4 is the training. Another function of mental hygiene is to train a set of personnel who can help the people with psychological problems. Now, importance of mental health and hygiene. Mental health has much wider scope than physical health, as it aims for the development of wholesome, balanced and integrated personality. Mental health is very important because mental health helps in number 1, the development of desirable personality. Number 2, it helps in proper emotional, social and moral development. Number 3, helps in proper aesthetic development, development of appropriate aesthetic sense, artistic taste and refined temperament. Number 4, helps in seeking proper adjustment as per the demands of the situation and well-being of the society. Number 5, helps an individual in seeking goals of life by diverting his energies in full capacity for the realization of the goals. Number 6, helps in progress of the society through development of well-balanced, useful citizens who are conscious not only of their rights but also of their responsibilities. Number 7, mental hygiene helps in prevention of mental illnesses. Now the strategies to maintain mental health. When we extend the concept of hygiene to the domains of mind, it stands for the art of developing, maintaining and promoting necessary behavioral, emotional and social skills to sustain good, effective and efficient mental health. One can achieve this by following some basic strategies like number 1, reality contact. In order to maintain good and sound mental health, it's important to have a realistic appraisal of one's own reactions, emotions and abilities. If you are in touch with reality, you may be able to avoid a number of disappointments and frustrations in your daily life. Number 2, impulse control. A person with healthy adjustment would have good control over his or her behaviors and impulses. Number 3, self-esteem. The awareness about oneself is called self-concept. It includes all the statements about I or me expressed in terms of feelings, beliefs or values. Self-esteem is the evaluative component of self, which can be either positive or negative. A sense of personal adequacy or positive self-concept is essential for mental health. Number 4, positive thoughts. The quality of mental health depends on whether we direct our thoughts in positive or negative ways. Negative thoughts generate negative emotions such as anger, hate, jealousy, fear and despair, making our mind unhealthy and also harm the endocrine system. So we need to develop the power of positive thinking such as love, joy, happiness, hope, compassion, empathy and optimism in us, which strengthens our capacity to cope with various challenges of life. Now students, we conclude. Mental hygiene is the science of maintaining mental health and preventing the development of psychosis, neurosis or other mental disorders. Since the founding of United Nations, the concept of mental health and hygiene have achieved international acceptance. As defined in the 1946 Constitution of the World Health Organization, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. The term mental health represents a variety of human aspirations: rehabilitation of mentally disturbed, prevention of mental disorder, reduction of tension in the stressful world, and attainment of a state of well-being in which the individual functions at a level consistent with his or her mental potential. As noted by the World Federation for Mental Health, the concept of optimum mental health refers not to an absolute or ideal state, but to the best possible state insofar as circumstances are alterable. Dear students, I hope you have enjoyed the program and understood the content. Thanks for watching.